of the world's foremost leadership authorities, organizational experts, and business-oriented thought leaders, recognized as one of Time Magazine's 25 most influential Americans. The quote reads, "Accountability breeds responsibility." What it means in the context of this presentation is that providing feedback to stakeholders is a crucial and necessary step that goes beyond merely meeting reporting requirements. It can evoke a positive response and successfully mobilize stakeholder attention and engagement in support of your program. On slide 21, you will see 3 questions that will help you gain a better understanding of your stakeholders and their interests. Question 1, who are the stakeholders? Question 2, what information do they need? And question 3, why do they need it? While these are not the only questions to ask when trying to understand your stakeholders, they are important initial questions to help you get organized. The answers to these questions will give you a foundation from which to build when conducting your program evaluation. We will now go through each of these questions one at a time on the upcoming slides. On slide 22 is question 1. Who are the stakeholders? This is a broad question and one that you may not be prepared to answer completely. As such, we have 3 additional questions or categories that will help you further define your stakeholder list. The response to the first question, who is involved in program operations, will include your staff, that is, the team who implements your program. This category may also include such individuals as supervisors and managers. The response to the second question, who is served or impacted by the program, will include the participants of your program and their family members, as well as individuals from the community. Your response to the third question, who will use the evaluation results for decision making, will primarily consist of the individuals who set policy and fund your program. There are a myriad of individuals who could serve as stakeholders in each of these categories. Some of them may even fall into more than one category, and not all of the categories will yield the same number of stakeholders. Let's review this another way on the next slide. On slide 23 is a different depiction of question 1 and the 3 stakeholder categories that we just reviewed. The 3 stakeholder categories are listed across the top, and examples of those stakeholders are listed in the left-hand column. The check marks in the cells represent particular stakeholders in their respective categories. This table is a simple illustration and may look different for different programs, depending on how your program is structured. For example, if you work in a program that is highly collaborative with other programs, you may have several check marks across this table. Remember, you may not have the same number of stakeholders in each category, and some of your stakeholders may fall into more than one category. Also, your stakeholder groups will change over time, so be sure to update your stakeholder listing regularly. Moving on to question 2 from the Understand Your Audience slide. Here on slide 24 is a table of questions to help you understand what types of information stakeholders will need. In the left-hand column are simplified adaptations of our 4 main questions in the program evaluation process. They are as follows. Was the program implemented with fidelity? Is the program sustainable? How do program structures and processes function? And has the program achieved its intended outcomes? Identical to the previous slide, the 3 columns to the right are stakeholder categories. The questions in the cells of these categories are examples of what stakeholders may ask as they relate to the 4 program evaluation questions in the left-hand column. For example, in the cell that is circled in red, an individual who is implementing the program, for instance, a healthcare provider, would want to know if the program is meeting its intended outcomes. One of those being a benefit for the individual participating in the program. Organizing the answers to these types of questions will have you well prepared when you present your program evaluation results to stakeholders. On slide 25 is our third and final question from the Understand Your Audience slide, slide 21. Why do stakeholders need this information? There are several benefits from sharing information with stakeholders. We offer some of them here. To demonstrate accountability, improve program services, advocate for service members and their families, identify lessons learned, build relationships, generate knowledge, provoke discussion, encourage responsive action, acquire or maintain funding and support, renew interest and commitment to the program, and enhance marketing or promotion efforts. We encourage you to add to this list. At the pinnacle of engagement is focused and regular communication with stakeholders regarding program evaluation findings. Regular communication of such findings might allow stakeholders to recognize their importance within the decision-making process and allow stakeholders to feel valued in terms of their opinions and interests. In addition, regular communication of findings can help to establish trust that the program is doing what it set forth to accomplish and fulfilling its own obligations. Communicating with stakeholders on a regular basis may also increase the likelihood that program events will be prioritized, further strengthening the relationship between the program and its stakeholders. Finally, regular communications of findings may also open new venues for stakeholders to provide their own feedback that can then be examined and possibly integrated into program changes. We will review this area in greater detail in the following slides. Program administrators at all levels serve an important role in programs and are key to successful reporting to stakeholders. In this context, the role of program administrators is to advocate for their program. Their task is to assert the value of their program and highlight its strengths. By connecting with stakeholders, program administrators can educate them about the program and inspire their support. Finally, administrators can also use social media to highlight success and validate support. An anticipated potential outcome of these efforts is the increased and accepted perception that your program is of value and worthy of attention and resources. These inputs, in turn, may serve to produce a more effective program that accomplishes its goals and serves its population. Now I will turn this presentation over to Dr. Jill Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. I will now discuss stakeholder engagement. In this section, I will be discussing some ways to promote stakeholder engagement and its important role in the success of program evaluation efforts. In addition, I will present a number of strategies for supporting and strengthening stakeholder interest, which will establish the foundation of trust and confidence needed to maintain stakeholder engagement online and in person. Let's begin with a roadmap of general approaches and actions to use in promoting stakeholder engagement. While the information age has created many additional communication pathways, there is no substitute for active and visible engagement with the key players for any program. For example, emails are best used for scheduling activities and coordinating logistical details, but much less effective in communicating concepts and strategies or in gaining stakeholder support or approvals. So while many stakeholders and sponsors may not be located close enough for regular face-to-face communications, every effort should be made to take advantage of those opportunities whenever possible. Developing and coordinating regularly scheduled program updates with stakeholders is essential to establishing their trust and support for the program. These regular events are more likely to become priorities in the stakeholders' schedules and will form the foundation of a program's administrator's direct communication with stakeholders. These regular events will also create opportunities for stakeholder to ask questions or provide feedback, and may also generate additional events for direct communications with smaller groupings of stakeholders. While direct communication with stakeholders is always preferred, It is also important to build coalitions with peers, leaders, and sponsors who are able to clearly articulate and present vital information near their locations and within their spheres of influence. Effective sponsorship is one of the top factors supporting program success and would include stakeholders as well as these coalitions. Experts estimate that approximately 2/3 or more of businesses have established a social media presence, and that 97% of nonprofits are using social media to spread the word on their cause. In fact, every branch of the U.S. military has some form of social media presence. Whether your program is starting from scratch in the realm of social media, or whether you already have an established presence, you may want to consider sharing your successes with a broader audience via social media. Beyond those in a program's chain of command, most stakeholders do not receive formal written reports or briefings on program evaluation results. Rather, these stakeholders learn about a program through its website, social media page, news media, and promotional flyers, in addition to their interactions with program staff. Social media is an excellent way to quickly deliver program evaluation findings that might allow these stakeholders to make better informed decisions regarding the program and their own participation. It may be helpful for programs to familiarize themselves with a variety of social media platforms. Each platform offers its own unique set of parameters and may reach a different audience based on age and demographics. For example, if a program is interested in increasing exposure and participation of a new outreach campaign, it may want to focus on videos that show the response to such campaigns through video testimonials or other on-site activities. Sometimes, offering surveys to your intended audience is the quickest and most effective way to understand their habits in terms of social media and how best to reach these as far as the content they prefer, whether it be photos, videos, research, or other text-related information. Finally, there are both quantitative and qualitative measurements for success in terms of social media engagement. For example, social media metrics may show the number of visitors on a given day, or if a site receives an influx of visitors following an event intended to increase online traffic. Qualitative metrics may involve reading online survey comments from regular users around engagement, or even conducting a discussion group to determine how engaged stakeholders are in terms of your social media platform or platforms. Stakeholder engagement is often a function of how well their interests are supported and strengthened by the program and its leadership. This support requires a focused approach, like the one outlined here on slide 30, and which can be applied to social media communications. The first step is to collect and analyze stakeholder feedback, which helps identify interest, but also reveals concerns and uncertainties. The second step is to develop action plans to address and manage those identified concerns and uncertainties. The third step is to implement those action plans. And finally, the fourth step is to take the initiative in celebrating program successes, with a particular emphasis on those that are of most interest to the stakeholders. Celebrating success online and through social media is a great way to keep stakeholders informed and engaged. An important element of effective feedback collection is making sure that conversations, interviews, and other feedback collection activities are arranged at the stakeholders' convenience. This will not only allow them to better prepare their feedback, but also will communicate their importance to the program and its success. While the means of feedback collection can be formal, such as standardized surveys, or informal, such as discussion groups, it is essential to foster a sense among the stakeholders that they are being heard and understood. The skill and art of listening to stakeholders should be developed and enhanced over time and will support the effective analysis of their feedback. One important outcome of feedback collection and analysis activities will be stakeholder interests that become more focused over time. In addition, stakeholder engagement will be further enhanced as their focused interests are incorporated into and highlighted in program reporting activities. While stakeholders may choose a number of different ways to communicate their concerns, these will often be a byproduct of feedback collection and analysis activities described on the previous slide. Once stakeholder concerns have been identified, it may also be necessary to confirm and clarify with them the appropriate stakeholder. The most effective way to accomplish this is direct communication with the stakeholder. This practice provides additional relationship building opportunities that are essential to stakeholder engagement. Once stakeholder concerns have been properly confirmed, an action plan can be developed to address them and hopefully resolve them. One effective way to approach the development of these action plans is to use an effective communication strategy, such as the Pro-Sci ADKAR model, that will be covered in more detail on the next slide. This model is built on the premise that concerns are very often related to elements of uncertainty that exist for any given program or project. Uncertainty can include varying levels of resistance or apathy. So identifying and exploring the root causes of these concerns can lead to the development of effective action plans to resolve them. As you will see on the next slide, the Pro-Sci ADKAR model highlights the gaps that tend to be the source of concerns and uncertainties. The chart on slide 33 shows the 5 areas or gaps covered by the Pro-Sci ADKAR model. These 5 are awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement, which are outlined here on the slide with some example actions. If the gap is awareness, action plans could include communications with senior leaders about the need for program evaluation efforts, to include reasons why it is important, the risk of not doing it, and existing mandates for program effectiveness. If the gap is desire, action plans could include implementation of the promotion of concern management strategies. If the gap is knowledge, action plans could include presentations on how program evaluation and improvement capabilities support the mission and improvements in operational readiness. If the gap is ability, action plans could include enabling or empowering strategies for key sponsors to promote and provide support for program evaluation and improvement capabilities within the program. This could also include coaching opportunities with leadership and selected subject matter experts. And finally, if the information gap is reinforcement, action plans could include messages from senior leaders that the program evaluation efforts are here to stay. As outlined on the 2 previous slides, an effective communication strategy model will contain guidance on how to develop a strategic action plan that provides more complete coverage in addressing concerns and uncertainties. Program administrators may benefit from using this model in preparation for implementing their strategic action plans. While program administrators would retain primary responsibility for the implementation of these strategic action plans, it may also be useful to enable key sponsors to assist in this process and to help manage different elements of concern that have been identified. For example, once sponsors are aware of a program's benefits and values, they can identify or respond to areas of resistance, areas of apathy, identify structures necessary to support the program, or identify other sources of support. Since action plans can become progressive over time, programs can benefit from conducting recurring reviews of strategic communications. An important purpose of these reviews would be to inform successive versions or updated action plans and to develop themes or focal points for strategic communication campaigns. The 4th and final step to support and strengthen stakeholder interest is the effective celebration of program successes. This starts with some preliminary efforts focused on matching stakeholder interests to ongoing accomplishments of the program. Stakeholders want to know when and how the program has achieved accomplishments that are in line with their expressed interest. Highlighting the connections between stakeholder interest and individual successes will help solidify and sustain their engagement. While this final point may seem a bit elementary, even small successes are worth celebrating in public forums. For example, this practice can help fill perceived voids between the announcement of major milestones or accomplishments. It can also contribute to creating a sense of expectation among the stakeholders and promote images of progress associated with the program. Now, I will turn the presentation back over to Mr. Frank, who will discuss communication methods and planning.
Knowing about stakeholder groups is important since communication choices are best made in context, by considering the stakeholder group and the message that is intended for that group. Effective communications will increase the likelihood that programs are seen to add value and produce benefits, that program evaluation results are perceived to be useful, and that program evaluation data can be used to aid stakeholders' decision-making. Communicating evaluation results are important components of the overall program evaluation process. Effective communication will assure that program evaluation information is received by the right people. Who are these right people? They are the different stakeholders, both internal and external to your program, that Captain Tamayan previously discussed. The list includes the program funding agency, along with program administrators, staff, and program participants. What does it mean to communicate? On the bottom of slide 37, you see a representation of a basic communication model. The model shows the sender on the left, which in this case may be you, who transmits a message through a channel or format to the receiver on the right, whose mind interprets the message. The receiver in this case is one or more of the stakeholder groups. Specific aspects of communicating or reporting will depend on the intended audience, the specific stakeholder group that is to be addressed. Let's take a look at each row in the chart presented on slide 38. Target audience. Consider the audience's background and level of expertise. It is important to know what type of information is best suited for each stakeholder group, so that what you communicate meets their needs. Commercials and public service announcements can be used to communicate to the participant community, while quad charts are for internal program leadership. Reporting resources. Determine what type of reporting can be achieved given the resources that are available. Do you have the time and monies needed to create and host web pages for program communications? Do you have staff to monitor and update Facebook pages on a regular basis? Regulations and requirements. Never publish or produce any materials without obtaining the input and approval of others. Ensure you have releases and permissions for all photos. Norms. What you report needs to be appropriate for the stakeholder group to which you are communicating. When communicating to service member families, follow plain language directives. When communicating with executive leadership, pay attention to military title and service rank. To sum up, identify your audience, fine-tune your message, and select the appropriate channel and format. Plan to communicate so that you can select the best channel and format to reach different types of stakeholder groups, formal groups versus informal groups. Communicating evaluation findings to different stakeholders is an important aspect of program evaluation. Invite your stakeholders to suggest ways they would like to receive information. Stakeholders are more likely to use evaluation results if they have some ownership of the evaluation process. The more people who have active involvement in the process, the easier it will be to use evaluation results for program improvement and decision-making. An effective evaluation provides usable information. As an evaluation communicator, you may be called upon to provide data with little notice. Maintain accurate and readily available information about program evaluations so that you can respond to requests for data on program activities and costs, participant demographics, participant outcomes, data that support decision-making, improvements to the program services, and common questions and responses. Ideally, data collection is built in and maintained alongside regular program operations so that data may be obtained easily. Some popular communication formats are presented in the chart on slide 41. This chart shows three media types: written, oral, and internet-based or social media. There are many communication formats from which to choose. For example, an outbrief is a public presentation conducted by leadership with a live audience. The implementation team, the larger unit, and other key leaders, typically using a PowerPoint. Several formats may be combined to promote greater dissemination of results. Sequencing a series of communication events, a written report, followed by a meeting, followed by a broadcast, can underscore the importance of findings and recommendations. Understanding the needs of stakeholder groups will be important to help you select the most appropriate format. The chart on slide 42 shows format options to consider for various stakeholder groups. Senior decision makers likely prefer a technical report. Implementation leadership may prefer after-action reports or staff presentations. Communications with participants may occur best through town hall or radio and TV interviews. Integrate your communications strategies into a plan or program. A very basic communications plan is presented in the chart on slide 43. The header row lists essential elements to include in any communications plan: audience, message, format, and timetable. In your role as information communicator, you need to understand the audience to whom a communication is targeting. Consider the goals of the communication effort, select a communication channel or format, and establish the time frame for information releases. Of course, all messages and communication activities must be cleared through the proper channels. Consider coordinating with your public affairs office or marketing representative for permissions and release authority. Overall, these steps will help to ensure a strong communications plan. Next, Dr. Goodman will review common challenges.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Now we'll review some of the common challenges that arise when military program administrators seek to report on program effectiveness. Slide 45 lists some common challenges that programs might encounter, such as: how will I know whether my program's social media efforts have been successful? What can my program do to be sure it aligns with evolving military reporting standards? What if I can't show my program is achieving outcomes at the time a program evaluation is carried out? On slide 46, how will I know whether my program's social media efforts have been successful? The best way to measure success of social media efforts depends on how a program defines success up front. For example, prior to engaging in any efforts with social media, programs will need to set realistic goals in terms of their reach. Most of the time, the purpose of social media campaigns is to raise awareness. Programs might want to consider setting specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, or SMART, objectives and metrics to determine reach. For example, how many clicks does the program want to achieve per month, or even per post? For videos, how many views does the program want to have on a specific video or video series? Next, the program should define action-oriented results from these online metrics that they expect to receive. For example, the program may want to measure how many inquiries they receive by email or by phone based on a specific post. It also is important to define timeframes for achieving goals so that they can be measured and replicated where the program has determined they have been successful. The most important consideration overall is to continue to collect metrics over time and somehow link these metrics to real results. On slide 47, what can my program do to be sure it aligns with evolving military reporting standards? As with any sort of program, priorities should align with those of the parent organization. In this case, a program's priorities and those of its program evaluation activities should be in alignment with Defense Department and service level interests, such as maintaining readiness and cost effectiveness, in addition to providing high-quality, effective services. It is also important to build in extra time for review of reporting materials through the chain of command. Even relatively brief and basic materials may require extensive review prior to release, especially for documents that will be available to the public. Make sure that review procedures are clear during the planning phases. As in any large organization, military programs operate in an environment that includes a large number of written reports, meetings, and presentations. This fact makes it all the more important that communications about effectiveness are clear, concise, consistent, factually correct, and compelling. Finally, as we have mentioned several times, make sure all appropriate permissions are acquired before release of any program information. On slide 48, what if I can't show my program is achieving outcomes at the time a program evaluation is carried out? This is a concern that we know keeps program administrators up at night. Stakeholders demand accountability and transparency of programs, and each program should be able to demonstrate measurable results that show it is useful and efficient. However, less mature programs might begin program evaluations with limited capabilities. If a program cannot readily produce information needed to demonstrate effectiveness, then it should focus efforts on developing and incorporating program evaluation capabilities into everyday program operations. This means establishing a plan for improving program evaluation capabilities within the program by establishing SMART objectives and outcome metrics, seeking consultation and support from outside resources, acquiring training and resources needed so that the program staff can generate data for self-evaluation and respond to any external evaluation efforts. Finally, a short-term possibility is that programs can report on process metrics, such as number of participants served or quantity of services delivered, to indicate whether they're doing versus whether it is effective. For programs that are capable of conducting and participating in program evaluation but have not yet found effects, efforts should be focused on planning and carrying out program improvements. I will now turn the presentation back over to Captain Tamayan.
Thank you, Mr. Frank, Dr. Goodwin, and Ms. Meehan. You've heard a great deal today about reporting program evaluation findings, which are essential to building a culture of effectiveness in the Defense Department's system of prevention and care for psychological health and traumatic brain injuries. A key takeaway from this presentation is that program evaluation is not an end in and of itself. Program evaluation is intended to make programs more effective in achieving their missions and works best when conducted regularly throughout the program development. Stakeholder engagement is essential to program evaluation efforts and requires strategic communications in support of stakeholder interests. Multiple reporting formats are needed to convey information effectively and highlight program successes and demonstrate program effectiveness to stakeholders. Follow communication best practices and establish social media guidelines. This will help bring clarity to your message. In doing so, a program may ensure it is supported and sustained over time. Now, back to Miss Mia.
Thank you, Captain Tamayan. There is a great deal of useful information available to programs on program evaluation and reporting procedures. On slides 52 through 55, we provide a brief list of key resources and references that we think may be useful. We are out of time for this presentation and unable to conduct a live question and answer session. For those of you leaving the webinar right now, please take a moment to complete the interactive customer evaluation or ICE card at this time. A link to the ICE card is located in the notes pod. For those of you staying with us, please submit your questions using the Q&A pod. Recall that your submissions will remain anonymous. Please stay connected. A link to the ICE card will automatically open. Any additional questions and comments following the session may be directed to Captain Armin Tamayan at the email address provided on slide 57. Thank you again, Captain Tamayan, Mr. Frank, and Dr. Goodwin. Again, please stay connected. A link to the interactive customer evaluation card will automatically open. It will only take a few minutes to complete and is very valuable. On behalf of DCoE, thank you for attending today's webinar. Please use any remaining time after completing your evaluation of today's event to network and chat among yourselves. Have a great day.